Hey everybody, quick thing before this review got started. I just noticed while I was editing that my mic turned off for the first little bit of this review. It does turn on later on into the review, so I'm sorry that the quality of the audio is a little bit muffled towards the beginning of the video, but it does get better about halfway through. So apologies on that, just wanted to state that up front. Hello interwebs, I am back with one of my favorite things to do, another Star Trek book review. This time, Star Trek Deep Space Nine Revenant by Alex White. I have been supremely excited to review this book and waiting for it to come out for quite a while for a couple different reasons. First off, it's a new Star Trek Deep Space Nine novel set during the actual timeline of the Deep Space Nine series, which we haven't gotten in quite a while. Like, we've gotten a few Deep Space Nine books here and there. They're also less numerous than most of the other series, but even the ones that have come out have been part of that post, Deep Space Nine post-show, post-Nemesis continuity that just wrapped up with the Star Trek Coda series. So having a new book sort of set during the timeline of the show is actually kind of cool and kind of feels a little bit refreshing, and I was very excited to hear that. But even more so, for two other reasons, is number one, this book was focusing on Jadzia Dax, which, if you know me, I love Jadzia. She's my favorite. I adore her. And one of the reasons that I adore her is that she was, for me, as a trans person, one of the first times that I got to understand trans themes and ideas through science fiction allegory. It's one of the things that many people in the trans community really connected with Jadzia for. If you know anything about like the confluence of the trans community and the Star Trek fandom, we have a big fandom for Jadzia for specifically that like Trill symbiote reason. And because of that too, the other thing that I'm excited for is Alex White, the writer of this novel, is actually non-binary and transgender themselves, which was super cool to hear because apparently CBS or Paramount or exactly Simon & Schuster, whoever was in charge of picking the authors for these novels, actually actively chose to find a trans voice to write a Jadzia novel, which I'm just very appreciative of, and I think you can definitely see it within this book. So for all those reasons, I was very excited to dive into this novel. And I should say, before I get into my review, something I'm very excited about with this review is I'm actually, because this is like my weird particular niche of trans issues and Star Trek novels, I like, it's too much of exactly my niche to not want to do something special for it. I actually reached out to the author Alex White, and I'm going to be interviewing them on this channel, and the interview hopefully should be going up tomorrow. So if you're watching this on the Monday that this review is going out, tomorrow, Tuesday, my review will be going up on this very channel. So I'm very excited to be doing that for this, because I really loved this book, and we'll talk about it in my review in just a second, but I felt like this is too much like my particular niche not to want to reach out and talk to Alex, and so I'm very excited. As of this recording, I haven't spoken to them yet, but it should be going up right after this. So anyways, regardless, check that out. I'm very excited about it, but let's actually dive into the review of this book. This book was great. This book was, I know I'm a bit biased to it for all the reasons that I said, but this was I think a truly special one. I think perhaps my favorite book of all the Star Trek novels that released in 2021, which is saying something because there was actually quite a few novels that released. I think the only other one was the Star Trek Picard novel that came out earlier that year that I also really thought was a kind of a masterpiece. But this one really does a great job of interrogating Jadzia and her history as a Trill, the world building of the Trill Symbiote Commission, and also just sort of interrogating this particular moment in Deep Space Nine history. This book takes place right at the beginning of Season 4 of Deep Space Nine, which was right when the sort of Klingon Cardassian War was going on, and Worf joined the crew. So as we know, Worf and Jadzia eventually get married within the show, but at this point they're still getting to know each other. And so what this book does is it allows Jadzia to have this big mystery that sort of it goes into her past as a Trill symbiote, and so she has to go and investigate one of her friends who's gone missing and who wanted to have a symbiote, and she encounters her and finds out that her friend now does have a symbiote. And what does that mean? And I don't want to get too much into spoilers with that, but it sort of sets her off on this investigation that really starts to interrogate some of the goings-on with the Trill Symbiote Commission, which we already know from Deep Space Nine itself in canon is already kind of a shady organization just in general. Like, a lot of really bad crap. They clearly are a very corrupt organization, have a lot of bias in that organization and who gets to pick, who gets to get what symbiote. And so this book sort of starts to interrogate that and really brings a lot of prescient issues to the fore, like bias in the selection committee. Like we see, when you have a group of people on a selection committee who all think the same, act the same, look the same, have certain predilections in society, they start to pick people that look and feel like them, and then that bias gets passed down generation after generation and generation. That happens in real life with skin color, gender, things like that. And so this book does that with, who gets to pick symbiotes and how that passes through in terms of, selection, in terms of getting to have ideas of who gets to have these generational ideas and what biases towards like science or artistry, creativity, that sort of thing. Really wonderful, I think, sort of interrogating of that idea. The other thing too, again, without getting too much into spoilers, there is sort of a darker mystery here that I think kind of investigates these ideas. Like when you think about the trail, you think about like, oh, these memories going throughout one symbiote's lifetime. So they have like this sort of like past lives sort of thing. But we never really think about the symbiote itself. We sort of think of the different hosts, but the symbiote is just sort of like a vehicle for that. And Dax, or the symbiotes that we see, never really have a sense of personality of themselves. And so this book, within the mystery that sort of Jadzia gets herself involved in, starts interrogating that. Like, what does a symbiote want and need and desire? And sort of ideas of identity, and not necessarily gender, but ideas of identity that I think really, having a trans writer really allowed this book to have a couple new facets to it that I think a different writer might not have been able to really hone in on and develop and explore in such a fundamentally intriguing way with the villains and major players within this piece. And I think it was just the questions of identity and self and how you place yourself within the context of your own identity, your own self, previous selves, previous lives that you may have lived in others' lives and community. I think we're just all really well developed here. The other thing, too, that this novel does that I really deeply enjoyed was it allowed Jadzia to have chances to bounce off of the different characters that she didn't get she got some screen time with, or not enough screen time with, or like didn't have a ton of screen time with at this particular moment in the history of Deep Space Nine. Like, we know Jadzia had a lot of time with Cisco on screen, but she didn't have a lot of time with Kira. There was a few episodes here and there where Jadzia and Kira had some like fun side stories off on the side of the show, like in the background, like where they're going to the holodeck and having fun together. But we didn't really get a lot of Jadzia and Kira getting to have storylines that were actually like part of the main plot, part of the main like thrust of the story of any episodes in particular. I maybe there was one or two, but none are like immediately popping into my brain of like Jadzia Kira episodes. I think like maybe there was one in season 2. They had a couple scenes together in, I think, like that like 3-parter storyline at the beginning of season 2, but even then that was sort of like just like they weren't really having a lot of stuff to do together. It was just sort of they did something together. So I like that this book gives a few moments to them. And then also Bashir and Worf get a lot of time with Jadzia as well. And again, we get to see Worf and Jadzia sort of starting to form their romantic relationship here. It's not like they're like being like, ooh, this person's hot, but you get the sense of like why they're drawn to each other a little bit throughout this book. And I thought that was really well articulated throughout this. I think Alex White did a fantastic job just sort of showcasing that. And also the relationship with Bashir, because this is also the time in the show's history where Bashir started finally calming down and not being such a horn dog, chasing after Jadzia and being like, oh, I want to date you, I want to be with you, and him just sort of starting to be like being a good friend to her. Like the beginning of season 4, there's all these scenes where Bashir and Jadzia are just like kind of bouncing off each other and just being good friends and like having jokes with each other and not necessarily having this like sexual tension within them. And so I think that was just a cool thing to see also brought up throughout this book, like their more platonic friendship that has grown between these two characters that I think is just wonderfully evoked in this book. So at the end of the day, I also really just enjoyed that this book challenged Jadzia, gave her good character moments, gave her good moments with the other characters on Deep Space Nine. It was a strong narrative of its own. There's a really strong mystery here that feels very prescient and important to issues that we're facing today in terms of institutional biases. Overall, I think it's a fantastic book. Again, I'm a little bit biased in terms of the character and the themes and the ideas and even the author behind this. So take that with what you will with my review. But I think that this was a truly strong book that I would very much recommend to anyone who is interested in it. Go out and buy it. I think it well deserves the attention. So that's my thoughts on Star Trek Deep Space Nine Revenant. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the comments below. Don't forget, I'm going to be interviewing the author tomorrow on this channel, so check out that video. It should either be up tomorrow, hopefully within a few days, if it's not up tomorrow, if you don't see it. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope that you, as always, don't forget to subscribe and live long and prosper.